Hello, friends. Welcome back to our short story series. In this series, we are going to share classic fairy tales, updated and changed based on your suggestions. In this story, we are going to hear about a little girl who lives with her grandmother in a small cottage. They are very poor and do not have very much. The little girl goes out into the forest to collect some wood to sell for food. But when she is in the forest, she meets some other people, and she stops to help each one of them with the little that she has. Will anybody be able to help her? Now, before we continue with our story, let's start by making sure you are comfy and take some great big belly breaths. Breathing in slowly through your nose and slowly out through your mouth. Notice how your belly rises as you fill yourself up with air. Breathe in and breathe out. Notice how relaxing it feels as you release the breath. Breathe in and breathe out. You are becoming relaxed, calm, and peaceful. One more time. Breathe in, hold, and breathe out. Now let's continue with our story. The kind little girl. In a land far away that had fallen on hard times, there was a little girl who lived all alone with her grandmother in a small house at the edge of a forest. They had become very poor and had a hard time buying food to feed themselves or clothes to keep them warm in the winter. "Don't worry, Nana," the little girl would say. "Someday I will grow big and strong enough to work, and then I will earn enough money that I will be able to buy the things we need and give some to all the others who are in need as well." One day, the little girl went off into the forest to gather long sticks of wood. These she hoped to sell for enough money at the market in town so that she might be able to buy some food. As she thought it might take her all day, she took with her into the forest a piece of some stale bread, which was all they had left to eat. It was winter, and it was very cold outside. The little girl wrapped her little shawl about her and ran as fast as she could. She was hungry, but she intended to save her piece of bread until after the wood was gathered. Just as she reached the edge of the forest, she met a boy, even smaller than she herself, and he was crying. The little girl, who always cared about other people, stopped and asked the child why he was crying. "I am crying," he answered, "because I am so hungry." "Have you had nothing to eat today?" she asked. I have had nothing, and I think we ran out of food, and I don't know where to go for food." The little girl sighed. "You are perhaps hungrier than I," she said, and she took the piece of bread from her pocket and gave it to the boy. Then she again hurried on. A little farther on, she met another child who looked much worse than that little boy. This child seemed almost frozen with cold. Her clothing hung about her in rags, and her skin looked blue through all the tears in her clothes. "Ah," she cried, "I wish I had a warm dress like yours. Help me, please, as I feel I might freeze from the cold." The good little girl was filled with pity. "It is not right," she thought, "that I should have both a dress and a shawl. I will give one of them to this poor little girl." She took off her dress and gave it to the child, and then wrapped the shawl closely around her shoulders. In spite of the shawl, she felt very cold. Still, she was near the place where the sticks of wood were to be found, and as soon as she had gathered them, she would run home again. She continued on, but when she reached the place where the sticks of wood were, she saw an old woman already there, gathering up the fallen wood. The old woman's body looked pained from the cold, and she was so poor and miserable looking that the little girl's heart ached for her. "Oh, oh," groaned the old woman, "how my poor bones do ache from the cold." The little girl thought of her own grandmother and of how she sometimes suffered from the cold, and she had pity on the old woman. "Here," she said, "take my shawl." And slipping it from her shoulders, she gave it to the old woman. And now she stood there in the forest with her arms and shoulders bare, and with nothing on but her light clothes she wore under her dress. The cold wind picked up and blew around her, but she did not feel cold. She had eaten nothing, but she was not hungry. She was fed and warmed by her own kindness. She gathered her wood and started home again. It was growing dusk, and the stars showed through the bare branches of the trees. Suddenly, an old man stood beside her. "Could you spare some of your wood?" he said, "for our home is so cold, and I am too old to gather wood for myself." The little girl sighed. If she gave him the wood, she would have to stop to gather more. Still, she would not refuse him. "Take them," she said. "I have the ability to gather more." No sooner had she said this than she saw it was not an old man who stood before her, but an angel. "You have fed the hungry," said the angel. "You have clothed those who had no clothes, and you have given help to those who asked. You shall not go unrewarded." At once a light shone around the child, and it seemed to her that all the stars of heaven were falling through the bare branches of the trees. But these stars were diamonds and rubies and other treasure. They formed a glittering carpet on the ground. "Take them," said the angel, "for they are yours." The child, wondering if this was a dream, in multiple trips gathered all the treasure and diamonds together, all that she could possibly carry. While she carried the fortune, she looked for the angel, but the angel was gone. The diamonds and rubies and other treasure were enough to make her and her grandmother rich beyond their wildest dreams. But this was not in the little girl's nature. So she first made sure that all the poor were warm, had food, and were clothed. Her grandmother and her still had all they would ever need, as they too were fed, warm, and clothed for the rest of their lives, and were beloved by all who knew them. And that's the end of this story. Now say after me, aloud, or just to yourself. I can make a difference. I can change the world. I am calm, relaxed, and peaceful. Sleep tight.